It's early and super quiet, so I thought this would be the perfect time to talk about Through the Trapdoor, at least as far as I can until my battery dies. Now, what I really like about this chapter is when you look at the series as a whole, you see the first book, if not the first two books. Again, before you're rereading them, when you hit Deathly Hallows, you see the first couple books as very childish books. Not nearly as dark, not nearly as foreboding. But Rowling herself pointed out that the first book starts with a double murder, which it does. The murder of Lily and James Potter. So, what I find interesting is when I reread it, I start seeing hints of that very darkness against which Harry's fighting already present within this first book. And surprisingly, Through the Trapdoor, while not showing that darkness as clearly as The Forbidden Forest and The Man with Two Faces does, what Through the Trapdoor shows is what these kids are going to be required to do to defeat this darkness. And that's the sacrifice. And you get this so clearly in this chapter. So, what they actually have is this series of trials they have to go through to get to where the stone is. And they are definitely aware somebody is ahead of them. They're aware that Dumbledore is not there. And they're aware of Voldemort's presence as of now. So, the next question becomes, what do they actually do about it? I've got a runner coming up. I'm going to pause. So this is the moment that sacrifice actually becomes very obviously involved. Because these are kids. In no circumstances should they be expected to put their very lives on the line to protect something that has no attachment to them. Or in Harry's case, like a very negative attachment. That is, his parents were murdered and he was almost murdered and But what I find interesting is, for the most part, these kids are not purely putting their lives on the line. Each of them are exhibiting the willingness to sacrifice other aspects of themselves. Let me break this down. Let's start with Hermione, because Hermione's sacrifice shows up earlier and it's also mentioned later. Hermione is willing to sacrifice her belief in authority and her position as smartest witch. Because they've been told off. Like, they've been warned off. McGonagall, don't go poking around. And Hermione's like, no, we need to poke around. Considering the fact that we see later in book 3 that her Bogart is her concern about grades, and it's specifically attached to McGonagall. The fact that she's willing to go against McGonagall and step up here is amazing. And you hear this later when she's talking with Harry in the potions section of the trial. She actually degrades herself. She recognizes she's smart. She recognizes that's not always the most important thing. And I find that fantastic. Because she's willing to say, no, this isn't something I can do. When all this time, she's a character that wants to do all of this stuff. She's so excited to learn magic. She wants to learn. She reads everything. She wants to figure it all out. But she's willing to admit that she's not the person for this job. And that's a big sacrifice. It's really hard to do that. Ron, of course, we see the really physical embodiment of the sacrifice in his move during chess, where he lets the queen take him so Harry can checkmate the king. This is a sacrifice mainly of body, but you have to remember the connections that Ron actually has. For example, let's look at the Mirror of Erised. He sees himself as higher than his brothers. This includes Quidditch captain. I don't think you can play Quidditch if you're like permanently disabled from getting smashed to bits by a giant chessboard. So the fact that Ron's willing to put his greatest desire away to prevent this evil from returning, that's actually really intense. And it's not just his body there, but his very being. It's awesome. Okay, it's getting pretty loud. Wait till I'm on the other side to talk about Harry. Harry very clearly is the instigator in we have to go and check this out. When Hermione and Ron are like, you're gonna get expelled, Harry recognizes that that means nothing. He recognizes, yes, that he'll lose everything, all of the things that he wants and has gained from Hogwarts, the use of magic, the freedom from his relatives, friends. He recognizes he'll lose all this and he'll be forced to go back to the Dursleys. But he also recognizes that that doesn't matter. What he actually says is it means I'm delaying death a little longer. Harry at 11 realizes how dangerous this actually is. His parents were killed. And he tried to kill a 1-year-old. Voldemort's not going to hesitate to kill a couple of 11-year-olds. So he is very much like, no, we need to do this. And that's the really interesting thing, is what we're actually seeing here is a sacrifice of Harry's normality. All Harry wants to be, and you'll see this a lot as we go through, is he wants to be normal. He doesn't like the fame that comes from the boy who lived attachment, especially when it keeps getting him into trouble like this. But he's actually willing to sacrifice that normality and that want to blend in and be a normal student that you see earlier in the books when he gets tired of people whispering and wish they'd talk about something else. He's willing to sacrifice his normality to become the leader that he needs to be. And that's actually very intense. Because when all you want is family, there's again that comparison at the Mirror of Erised. Ron wants to be the one in the spotlight, not Harry. But Harry recognizes he needs to step up in this moment. And he takes charge. He takes charge when Hermione starts to panic and says, well, light a fire. Because she can remember, but she's panicking. So he says, no, light a fire. He takes charge with getting the key. And what I find interesting between the movies and the books is all three of them are up in the air trying to get the key. And Harry's directing them so they can corner it. It's not just Harry on that one. He gives over charge when he recognizes he needs to. He gives it to Ron in the chess match, and he gives it to Hermione's logic in the potions room. And again, that's actually a sign of a really good leader. Delegate when you know you need to delegate. When you know this is not your strong suit, delegate. If it's nobody's strong suit, step up. So, all three of the Golden Trio actually make really big sacrifices within the first book. And we're going to see that grow as we go on. Okay, I'm going to wait until I'm past all these houses to start part 2. So the question becomes, why is this the chapter to start talking about redemption in? Well, it's because 2 reasons. The first is simply the Golden Trio are going to need redemption. Because before we even get to the trapdoor, which the rest of the chapter is about, they attack Neville. Neville tries to get in their way, so they make the decision to stun him. And this is an interesting thing, because this is a moment that we really see two groups of people who both think they're doing what's right, coming to a head. And neither of those groups are considered bad. They're both good guys. But they're still bumping into each other here. And from that, the decision is made by Hermione to stun Neville. And what's very interesting about this is the fact is this isn't considered a good thing. They apologize to Neville as they're going by, even though they recognize that they are doing, in the long run, by going after Voldemort, who they think is Snape, or Snape working for Voldemort. As they're going after him, in the long run, they're doing the right thing. But that never, ever makes attacking Neville a good thing. Never. So, they actually do require some redemption after that choice. Now, I think, of course, that they get that redemption when their actions come through and everyone figures out what actually happened. Especially then with the points. But we'll talk about that in the next video. But there's another thing, another reason I'm bringing up redemption here. And oddly enough, we find it in the potions section of the trials. When Hermione reads it out, there's a couple poisons, a couple nettle water, the way to go through, and a potion that lets you go back. And the question is, why do we have this? Is the assumption not that only someone bad is going to be trying to go through, so why let them go back? Why not just trap them there? Well, that's because it's Snape's room. It's Snape's challenge that he designed. And if anyone needs redemption, it's Snape. Snape wishes he had the option to go back, to change his mind. But what he did couldn't be undone. It could be delayed, yes, but it could not be undone. So he, out of anyone, would include the way back for people who realize they've made a major mistake. Okay. Yeah, that was the part that I was like, that I mentioned in the last video, so I'm super excited to be able to talk about it, but it's actually a really sad and intense moment. So, very poignant for me that Snape allows redemption when we're not seeing that with anybody else. Okay, so I'm going to say goodbye for this video. We've got one more left of Philosopher's Stone, and I've already started reading Chamber of Secrets, and starting to get everything put together for that. So I will see you next time for our last Philosopher's Stone, and then we keep moving forward. Bye-bye!